This video is of our July 2019 trip around the Whipsaw Trail. There were 3 of us on this trip. Myself, my KTM 1090, Richard on his KTM 990, and Dave. It was the first time out with us for him on his KTM 690. He also started this trip with about 1,400 kilometers on his 690, and this worked out from home, the lower mainland, out and around the trail and back home again, around a 700 kilometer trip, so it was fairly substantial. He put 50% of the kilometers he had on his bike on this trip. We left Colmont on a pretty well-groomed Forest Service road, but once we turned off towards Whipsaw, it got like this, and I think this is perfect riding for the big adventure bikes. It's challenging enough, but not too difficult. You could ride it for a sustained period of time. I'll take this moment to apologize for the creaking, clicking noises you guys are hearing in the background. It's actually my GoPro mount. It was a little bit loose. I didn't realize it was loose until I watched this video and realized what kind of annoying stuff was getting recorded over top of the other sounds. I honestly can't figure out how to take it out of the audio. I'm sure someone with more skill at video editing could just click a button and make it go away, but that's way above my pay grade, so sorry, it's here for the whole video. Considering we were riding this trail on a beautiful sunny Saturday in July, I expected that it would be quite busy, but we really didn't pass that many vehicles. There were some side-by-sides and 4x4s, 2 other motorcycles. The biggest group was quite large, 20 or 30 four-wheel drives from a 4x4 club, but they were fairly close together and easy to get around, so that was a nice surprise. This next little section of video, the audio is kind of goofy because I think this is where I had left my case a little ajar on my Garmin Verb. So in other words, the back door was open about 1/8 of an inch. I'm just lucky I didn't lose the whole thing. Unfortunately, it drowned out all the noise except for that annoying clicking that's coming out of my mount. Sorry about that, guys, but don't turn up your volume too loud because the rest of the audio will be back pretty quick. The terrain progressively got tougher and tougher, and the thing that I really surprised me about this trail that I wasn't expecting was that it was sustained. I thought we'd be hitting tough sections with, you know, a section that was not so hard in the middle, you know, your typical type of trail or ride, but this one got you into the tough stuff and it kept you there for a very sustained period of time for the bulk of the ride. So it was physically it was very tiring to get through this trail. This is the first video I've put up that I have not included every single one of my bike drops or crashes. I don't know why I like to include them, but I feel like I'm BSing everybody if I don't put them up. Other people's crashes, I typically, unless they're super entertaining, I don't include them in my videos, but my own are always there. This ride, it totaled of 5 crashes, and so there's just so much of it, I left some of them out. I will put them at the end of the video. They are not very glorious. They're all crashes caused by my SLS condition, and I realize there's just nothing I can do about it. And those of you out there who suffer from SLS realize if you've got short leg syndrome at the end of puberty, it's probably never going to go away. So the only option is to ride a shorter bike or suck it up and pick that thing up every time you drop it. All my drops today in this ride were basically the non-glorious stop the bike, either by stopping or stalling, go to put a foot down, and the ground is an inch lower than you expected, and that's enough to do it. That extra 2 inches and a 550 pound plus bike makes for pretty much a guaranteed lay down. So yeah, it wasn't glorious. It really tired me out. The ride was tiring enough, and picking the damn bike up 5 times just about killed me. I came home, and the next morning my shoulders were pretty darn sore from lifting this big pig up so many times. But I will include all my drops at the end of the video, so you guys can see. There's really some that are quite bad, where I literally put my foot down and the bike tipped over an inch, and I couldn't straighten it out, and it just took me about 30 seconds to drop the bike. You know, it's not really a crash, it's just a frickin' drop. And I think I did that 2 of the 5 drops. I had the bike leaning over an inch too far, tried to hold it up, which in hindsight was probably a mistake, because man was I ever tired by the end of this ride. And trying to hold up a 500 pound bike that's tilted part way over is a fairly exhausting process. Anyway, stay tuned if you want to see all my embarrassing drops, but a few of them are included here, and I'll comment on them as they happen as well. Well, this here is my first drop of the day. It's right after the trail became a bit steeper, and we started to see more large pieces of rock in the trail. I came around a corner and was thinking I was going to head up on the right-hand side, but there was a big rock. In hindsight, I think I could have just flipped the throttle and gone over it, but it looked like it had a much more vertical face at first glance. I stopped and went to put my foot down, and there was a bit of a depression, and down it went. Again, not real super glorious, but one of my drops. That was the first one, and little did I know, first of many. Now we have Dave on his 690 coming up, making it look easy, just breezing right up there without a second thought. Richard on his bigger bike had a little bit more trouble, but managed, when he stopped to have a look at it, he got his foot down and didn't dump his bike over like I did. big unknown. Oh, he's fine. Oh. Piece of cake. One of the things I think we were all expecting on this ride was some really big, soupy, muddy puddles. And we hit most of them with a fair bit of caution to try and avoid sinking the bike up to the handlebars in muck or mud. But they all had pretty solid, firm gravel underneath, and none of them were super deep. Except for one where I got to the point where I said, well, you know, they've all been good, so I'll just ride into this one. You'll see that one later. And thanks to the boys for helping me drag my bike out of that muck. I guess that's the risk you take when you go first. You got to put your wheel into what looks like it could be 6 inches deep or 3 feet deep, and you just don't know. Stopping here for a moment to wait for Rich to pick up his bike. Like I said earlier, I usually cut this stuff out, but you know what, it was a tough trail, and I gotta show that other people can drop their bike. I can't remember for certain, but I think Rich might have dropped his bike 2 times on this trail, which is, I think, highly respectable, but yeah, my 5 is like the gold medal performance. Yeah, I really have to apologize for the creaking of my camera based on the loose mount, and it's also causing the picture to shake around quite a bit, which I know makes it annoying to watch, but the only way I'm getting better video of this is to go back and do it again, and I don't think I would have any riding partners if I wanted to head back right away. I might be able to talk these guys into going back next year. I think I would do it. I think it would be easier kind of knowing there's no big cliffs or drops or anything really nasty around the corner. The unknown and having to be cautious going around every bend and thinking there's going to be a lot of traffic slows you down a little bit, and well, at least I felt like it prevented me from carrying as much momentum through some of the tight spots as I probably could have. But who knows, next year I'll probably forget everything and ride it the same way if I can talk anybody to go back with me. I don't think this is a trail anybody, aside from the elite few, would tackle on their own. Me, I know I need help picking my bike up, of course. So it's a partner ride for sure. There's a lot of forks in the road on this trail, and you kind of know every one of them leads either to something really tough or something a little easier. And sometimes you can tell, other times it's kind of eeny, meeny, miny, mo, and you hope you made the right decision before you get into it, because turning around is not usually an option. Luckily, riding this one, I think, managed to pick the right way most of the time. Oh, wet feet. You're right. Wet feet. Here's a hill that's much steeper and much more sustained than it looks in video, but it just demonstrates how critical momentum and traction is. Richard got stalled up first, and it wasn't long before I lost traction and had to stop. And of course, Dave on the 690 just goes bouncing up it like it's nothing, and right to the top. Luckily, both Rich and I managed to gain traction and get moving again, because it would have been a difficult job to turn the bikes around on that hill. This adventure riding is fairly new to me. I'm just over a year in now. I came off of quite a few years of riding pavement after a long break from pavement and dirt in my younger years. But, you know, my wife's not super happy about the adventure bike. She doesn't get to go for long street rides, and she's not too keen on climbing up on the back of this thing. She says it's too damn tall. But at the same time, says I've never been happier, and I don't think I have been happier with a bike that I've ever owned in my life. It allows me to go on places like this, and it also allows me to go on pavement rides and have a blast. And in the middle, the FSRs and forest roads, you can go long distances and explore some very interesting places. The places I've been on this bike have just, blows my mind. Some of the things that are out. Hundreds of kilometers off the beaten path on gravel. We're just approaching the camp at Wells Lakes, which should be about the halfway point here. I didn't, unfortunately, I didn't get any good video of the camp, but this is about where we are in the trail now, so the middle of the way at Wells, and managed to well, I managed because I was the one with the GPS and had the tracks. Get a little bit lost here. I didn't, I had downloaded some GPS tracks off the internet, and whoever recorded them had spent some time at this camp and ridden in and out and driven or whatever all around, and it made for quite a few different directions of travel. With my GPS at the zoom level that I was riding on, I couldn't really see that. It just looked like we were supposed to go through here somewhere, and I couldn't find the darn road. And it wasn't until I stopped and had a look and zoomed way in that I could see that it squiggled all over the place, and ended up going across the middle of the lake. And that road, you know, from where we were, wasn't really apparent. But what ended up happening is I was riding off in the wrong direction, thinking that was our road, and realized it was the wrong direction, turned around, came back to the camp just in time to watch the guys ride past me. So we went in there, and that's where we are here, and I'm trying to get out, and it was a nice little route around, I thought. I saw some grass tracks going out, and this is where I found that they did have some deep puddles here. I looked at this, you know, all the other puddles were fine, and boom, in my front tire went, and it was quite deep and soupy. I didn't think twice about not trying to ride into it. We, with great effort, pulled the bike out and turned it around. So here right now is some shots of the camp in the distance, and as we finally figured out that we had to ride across the lake. So that's what we did, coming up here in a moment, and we finally got the heck out of here. We're on the other side of the lake now, and the trail climbs steeply away from it. Quite a long, sustained uphill. I think it might have been, I'm still not sure whether it's easier to ride it the way we did or the other way. I think both ways would be challenging. There were definitely a lot of hills coming out of camp, heading towards Highway 3. I don't know whether they're harder or easier than the hills on the other side that we came down to ride up. The other side definitely had some loose stuff, which on two wheels is particularly challenging because it tends to move you around a lot. So this is probably the best way to go. I'm really not sure what happened here. I think I might have stalled the bike. I have to say I was pretty darn tired at this point and wasn't riding my best. Of course, you can see by the angle of the bike I chose to put my right foot down to stop me, and geez, if I was 7 feet tall, I wouldn't have touched the ground. But 99% of that is just a lapse of judgment. A, stalling the bike, and B, thinking I can put my foot down on ground that doesn't exist. So that's the next crash in the saga, and stay tuned, there are more. The second half of the ride had a few nice breaks from the snarly stuff, and even though on a normal ride we'd consider this fairly challenging terrain, it felt pretty easy and gave a chance to relax and kind of catch your breath. It was nice to be able to look around and see the Alpine meadows. That is one thing this ride had, is just some absolutely amazing views, and you can see here in the meadows we've got some flowers starting to come out. I imagine in August, a month later than we were there, it would probably be just full of color. And we're up into the trees that have that subalpine look to them. So yeah, this is a really nice ride all in all. The challenge of it makes you focus on the riding more than the area you're in, but that's kind of a shame because it really is a beautiful area. Coming up here is what I think is the last drop that I actually have in this video that I'm going to show you guys before the end. I'm just coming down the hill, can't really tell how the terrain looks. I come through these trees and see a pretty big drop in front of me, and instead of just doing what I should have and going over it, because that's going to be easier on me and the bike than stopping and doing what I did by trying to put a foot out and getting dirt that's not there. Again, 3 feet below the level my tire's sitting, I have no chance of staying up. And yeah, just being tired and dehydrated. It was probably very high 20s, very, very humid today, the day we did this ride, and I had run out of water before we hit the camp at midway, so I was feeling pretty parched. But that's no excuse. The other boys rode down her no problem. Rich was smart enough to take a more cautious line, and of course Dave just went bouncing on down to the 690. That thing will go over anything. Yeah. Yeah, that's a pretty gnarly section to go up. I can't believe those stock vehicles went up that. What? The stock vehicles. Yeah, but he's stock. The group we had passed on the last hill was the beginning of a group of 20 or 30 trucks from a four-wheel drive club. We proceeded to go by all of them one at a time. We stopped and waited for a lot of them to go by. It was not too bad. They were good. They didn't run us off the road. Gave us lots of room, and we got out of their way wherever we could as well. It was interesting to see. There were some pretty cool trucks, and these guys were going through some pretty gnarly terrain. Few of them were basically stock vehicles that I just cannot believe can negotiate this stuff without destroying themselves. One fellow in a Cherokee pickup truck definitely looked like he was destroying it. The bumper was hanging off, and that last rock where I went down, he just went over with brute force, and you could hear metal on rock as the underbody of his car just bashed over it. But the thing was still running, and I'm pretty sure he probably got all the way in and all the way through. One more? Okay. this point, the trail was starting to get a little bit easier. It was getting back to that kind of perfect big adventure bike trail, but unfortunately I was so tired and thirsty that I didn't enjoy it as much as I think I should have. Watching the video, I can see that it's an awesome trail, and I seem to remember kind of just watching for the end of that GPS track at this point, because I wanted I wanted wings, beer, and a burger, because that's the day had been a long one so far. We really didn't bank on being in here as long as we were. I had told my wife that we would be home 5, maybe 6:30, that I would be for dinner, and we rolled out of this trail onto the Hope Princeton at about 6:30. I don't think it was about 9:30 before we were sitting down to have dinner in Mission, and I crawled into bed just before 11 after just dumping my bike in the garage and coming upstairs. One of the things with these big, heavy adventure bikes is that not only do you have to worry about what you can ride over, you got to really be mindful of what the bike can do as well. I personally, I think I put 2 dents in my front rim on this ride, and we barely got into second gear at all. But you can hit stuff on these bikes without being all that fast. It can do some damage because they're just so heavy. I haven't done anything to my suspension. I think that would probably help a lot, because I do bottom my suspension pretty much every time I ride it, quite frequently, and I've got it stiff enough that any stiffer and I lose traction with the ground, the tire's just bouncing. So good suspension would help, and the stock rims aren't the strongest things in the world. A couple of new rims might, or at least a new front rim that's a little stronger might help. But I'm just always amazed at it's really, I think, the first bike that I've owned that I can push it hard enough where I know I can do some damage just with regular riding. And this is one case. I'm looking at a section of the video where we got going a little bit faster back there, and there's constantly points where you can feel that you've used up all of your tire, and you're hitting the rim. I do run 28 psi in the front tire. I've got a Meadows E09 front on there, which is got more plies than any other tubeless front tire I've found for an adventure bike. But still, I'm managing to. I've got. Like I say, I've got a couple of dings I've got to press out of the rim when I do my next tire change, and you really got to be mindful of that. The challenging and technical riding just seemed to go on and on and on and on. It was a big effort for 50-something-year-old dudes, I'll say that for sure. At least it was for me. I can't speak for the other guys, but they certainly looked as tired as I felt at the end of this ride. Everybody was well exhausted, and I think we all slept quite well that Saturday night. Making this video was an interesting edit. I don't really put a lot of effort in my videos. I usually just scan through for the sections that give you the best feel for a ride I've done. So either the awesome scenery or the tough sections. That way people can watch and know what to expect if they decide to go out and attempt that route themselves. I do it because when I first started thinking about getting into adventure riding, I watched all kinds of adventure and dual sport videos from around our area, and I really appreciate the people that put them up because it gave me a good feel of what to expect before I took the plunge and bought the bike and all the gear. So that's what I'm trying to do, and it's also a good video library for me. I can go back on a rainy November day and relive some of my rides that I'm kind of craving going for a ride, but it's just too darn miserable to go out and do it. Anyway, I put those clips together and usually end up with a 10 or 12 minute video, and in this case I've cut out stuff that would be the highlight of other rides as far as difficult terrain goes anyway, and I'm still left with a video that I think is going to wind up being more than an hour. Well, we're coming up to the end here. There's the old horse corral, and that marks the end of the technical stuff. We're going to head out onto some wide open gravel, which is after the amount of technical terrain here, it's a welcome change, and we'll be heading down to Highway 3 and out of here. Stay tuned. I'm going to throw together a compilation of all my crashes. There's lots, unfortunately, this ride. This is the cabin I was thinking about. This is my crash sequence, and it turns out I fibbed earlier in the video. There were actually 6 bike drops and 1 riding into the puddle, which I don't really think is a crash, but I included it here for a total of 7. This first one you've seen, I just dropped the bike over, couldn't get my foot down, it didn't stall. This is my puddle submarine adventure right here, and you guys saw that already. This one here, I went to move the bike forward, I hit a rock and went to put my foot down, and it was just the bike leaned over, I could not hold it up. The same one here, I was turning the bike around and had to put a foot down, was leaned over a bit, couldn't hold it up. You might be able to hear me swearing. I threw a bit of a temper tantrum on this one. You saw this one, I actually did stall the bike here, going up, it bounced up, not enough clutch or whatever, and down she went, and almost upside down. Then moving forward, this is the one where I really probably should have surveyed the hill a little bit better. Rode through, tried to look at a little drop, and landed up dropping the bike because, of course, couldn't put my foot down again. And the very last one here is just really bad judgment using the front brake, approaching some mud. I just came on the wrong line. I should have been shooting more to the outside.